اللهم فقهنا في الدين وعلمنا التأويل يا رب العالمين. Yesterday we talked about, we're still on the chapter of menstruation. Yesterday we spoke about the beginner. So the woman that is just beginning her menstruation, what does she do? What does she look for? And how does she go about dealing with her first menstruation? And we said that if she is at that age where a person that at her age would normally get a menstruation cycle, and the sifa, the description of the blood, looks like the blood of menstruation, then she will leave off the salah, and she will leave off the things which are forbidden during the menstrual cycle. We also mentioned yesterday that if the bleeding proceeds and it exceeds over 15 days, then after the 15th day, it is considered istihada, or damul fasad is considered regular bleeding or irregular bleeding, and it is not considered the menstruation, which means that she will take a ghusl. We mentioned that she will take a ghusl on the 15th day. She will clean herself. She will put something to block off any blood from contaminating her clothing and her and other places where she may go. And then she starts to pray. She makes one wudu for every salah, and she starts to pray. Now, today we'll talk about what happens if after these 15 days the bleeding continues. So yesterday we said, okay, if it continues for 17 days, 18 days, 19 days, 20 days, then for those extra days after the 15, she has to pray normally. She makes one wudu for each salah and she prays. What happens if the bleeding continues until the next month, and it goes on until when she should normally get her cycle again? So it continues for over 1 month, and then it comes to the time where she's normally getting her cycle. How does she differentiate? Is this irregular bleeding? Is this istihada? Or is it dam al-hayd? Is it her hayd? So the author rahimahullah, he says, قال المصنف رحمه الله ابن قدامة, he says, فإذا استمر بها الدم في شهر الآخر, if the bleeding continues until the next month, فإن كانت معتادة فحيضها أيام عادتها. If she was one of those women that had a cycle, then her hayd, her menstruation, will be what her cycle was. So here we see the importance of recording the cycle, right? And how the ruling of those days that your cycle comes into play. So if she was mu'tada, and mu'tada is a word in fiqh which is used to define a woman that has an established cycle. So every single month it's 6 days or 7 days or 8 days, right? So if she's mu'tada, right, she has this continued cycle for over 3 months, right? We said that the mu'tada, she's the one that has the same cycle for 3 months consecutively. So if she is mu'tada, then, and she's bleeding, she has istihada, she doesn't know if it's hayd or if it's not hayd, then what does she do? Her hayd is the same days as her normal cycle from before, right? So it's easy, right? Her hayd is the same days as her normal cycle. So if she was doing, if it was for 7 days, then for 7 days she will that will be yu'tabar, it would be as if she has her hayd, and she would not pray and not fast, and she would refrain from the things that are haram during her hayd for those 7 days, right? وَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ مُعْتَادَةً وَكَانَ لَهَا تَمِيزٌ وَهُوَ أَنْ يَكُونَ بَعْضُ دَمِهَا أَسْوَدْ ثَقِينًا وَبَعْضُهُ أَحْمَرْ رَقِيقًا فَحَيْضُهَا زَمَنُ الْأَسْوَدِ ثَقِين. And if she does not have an established cycle, so she's not mu'tada, right? And she has tamiz, she has something to distinguish she has something to distinguish her hayd, her menstruation with. And then the author mentions what is that thing? How do you distinguish which is istihada and which is hayd, which is regular bleeding and which is a menstrual cycle bleeding? He says, وَهُوَ أَنْ يَكُونَ بَعْضُ دَمِهَا أَسْوَدْ ثَقِينًا, and it is that some of the blood is black and thick, وَبَعْضُهَا أَحْمَرْ رَقِيقًا, and some of it is red, so it's a lighter red color, and it is thin. Then he says, فَحَيْضُهَا زَمَنُ الْأَسْوَدْ الثَّقِينَ, then her hayd would be, her menstruation would be when the blood is thick and it is dark or it is black. And when they say black, they mean a darker color, a darker, thicker color. Right? So if she can tell the difference, then she works with that tamiz, that thing where she can distinguish if it is hayd or if it's not hayd. Right? And we said that the way to distinguish is if it's darker and if it's thicker, then it will be considered hayd. And if it is not, if it is thin and if it is lighter red, then it would be considered regular bleeding, istihala. وإن كانت مبتدأة أو ناسيا لعادتها ولا تمييز لها فحيضها من كل شهر ستة أيام أو سبعة لأنه غالب عادة النساء. Then he says here, and if she was a beginner, so if she just started, she never had a cycle before, right? And now she starts, but her bleeding is going over 15 days, over 1 month, it's going into the next month. What does she do? She has no established cycle before, and she does not know how to tell. She can't tell if it is the menstruation blood or not. There's no difference. It's all the same to her. She's not able to tell, right? There's no time when she can say, well, it's thicker now, it's a darker color, it's lighter now. There's no way to tell. What does she do in this case? So he says, if she has no tamiz, she has no ability to distinguish, فَحَيْضُهَا, then her hayd, her menstruation would be 6 days or 7 days, because this is the customary this is the customary period for women. So it would be 6 or 7 days, and this is what the Prophet ﷺ commanded as well for the one that does not have a tamiz, or the one that is not able to distinguish. He said in a lengthy hadith, he said, so observe your menses for 6 days or 7 days, and Allah alone knows which it should be. And then he said, when you see that you are purified and quite clean, pray during 23 or 24 days and nights, and fast, and that will be enough for you. So anyways, al-maqsood, the intent, or the what we take from this hadith is that 6 or 7 days she will establish as her hayd, her menstrual cycle, and that means for those 6 or 7 days she chooses whichever one she thinks is closer to hers, either it's 6 or 7. Those days she will refrain from doing the things which are haram when she's having her cycle, like praying and like fasting and all of the other things that we mentioned previously in the previous durus. وَالْحَامِلُ لَا تَحِيضُ إِلَّا أَن تَرَى الدَّمَ قبل ولادتها بيومين أو ثلاثة فيكون دم النفاس. And the pregnant woman does not menstruate except only if she sees blood 2 or 3 days before her delivery, and this would be damun nifas. It would be considered postpartum bleeding. And this is basically, so what the author is saying here, that the pregnant woman does not have a hayd. She does not have a menstrual cycle, right? And this is known في علم الطب. It's known in medicinal science as well, that women that are pregnant, they do not menstruate during their pregnancy. However, if she sees blood 2 or 3 days before her delivery, then that will be considered postpartum bleeding. And the ruling for postpartum bleeding is that it's the same as hayd. So you leave off all of the things that you would leave off during hayd, such as the salah and the siyam and everything else. So if she bleeds 2 or 3 days, that would be basically the baby is coming out, and it's at the starting of coming out, so that then there would be blood. So she would leave off. She would do as if she is in her hayd and leave off those things that she would leave off during her menstrual cycle. And we'll end here, inshallah. Tomorrow we'll discuss the chapter of Babun Nifas, postpartum bleeding. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi